So this is going to be a demonstration of the application I built, which creates HTML formatted emails, which are fed from a SQL Server database and sent through Gmail. I'll start by playing the application and showing the output. So this console window is outputting a list of tax ID and email addresses, which emails were sent to. And I will go ahead and open the recipient's email box. And we see the three emails. You can see at the top of the email we have the tax ID listed as well as in the body of the email. And there's two tables, one for provider, one for location. For this tax ID we have 3 providers and 2 locations. For the next example we have 1 provider and 1 location. And for the final example we have 4 providers and 3 locations. You can see that as the number of providers or locations increase, the table increases in size. The application also outputs a text file, like a log, so that we can keep track of which tax ID and email addresses we have sent emails to. So we have 3 right now. I'll go ahead and close this and run the application again so that you can see that it will continue to grow. Now we have 6, so that's working. So this is fed by a SQL Server database. So I've got all the data in one table. We've got the email address and tax ID and the provider ID, as well as physical and billing address. I just have 3 tax IDs loaded up, and there's multiple rows for some of the tax IDs and just 1 row for this Gary Smith person. And the application is fed by 3 SQL queries. So here we're collecting the distinct tax ID and email addresses. And I put the database connection in a separate file. So this is where we're connecting to the SQL Server Express database. So we could change this to an Oracle database. And this method is where I pass any SQL query that I want in, and it returns a SQL data table. So the result of the query gets returned to us in a SQL data table. So that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm writing this query, select distinct tax ID email address from provider data, and it's putting the output into a data table called tax IDs and emails. Now I'm saying for each row in tax ID and emails, execute the below code, and I start by getting my provider data. So I wrote a new query, and the result of which is to fill a new data table called provider data table, and this is storing all the provider data for this tax ID. And then I'm doing the same thing for locations. So now I have 2 data tables, one with provider data and one with location data. Now we can't send a data table through email, so we need to convert it to HTML. So that's what I do next. I take the data tables and I convert them to HTML using a method called convert data to HTML. So I pass the provider data table, and then I'm passing the keyword provider to this method down here. If I'm passing the keyword provider, then I make a header row with these column names. And basically what this is doing is it's iterating through the data and adding HTML tags where necessary. So I've listed all the HTML tags up here, like row start, column start, and as we're iterating through the rows, I'm adding them, like you can see here, row start and row end, column start and column end. And I do this for both provider and location. So now we have two strings that were built from the provider and location data tables, and I'm sticking those into the main HTML. This HTML string has all of the text that's going to be inserted into the letter. Like this is where that tax ID at the top of the letter is, and this is the tax ID in the body of the letter. And then I'm sticking the provider table and location table HTML into the body of the email. All of that is being stored into a variable called HTML, and now I'm using the last method, which is send mail, and I'm passing the HTML and also the tax ID and email address that we're currently on to the send mail method. So the send mail method is connecting to Gmail. I'm using my username and password, temporary password, and I can specify the subject here, and the recipient is the email address that I'm passing to this method. And once the email, it's okay, sorry, it's trying to send this email, and if it's successful, it will write the tax ID and email address to the console window. That's the output that we see here. If it fails, it will write the error message into the console, so the error will appear here in this window. And so where we're at right now is we just sent the email for this row, and now we're going to write the output to the data file, to the log file, and that is basically it. So thank you.